Hi everyone. Okay, so here is the technique video for the April 2026 KitClub. Now this is going to be an interesting one because it literally is going to focus on the Distress watercolor crayons, and then it's going to focus on collaging and what products we use, and I also want to talk about why I think it's important to start using what we have in the current times we are in, and how even if you don't have the specific products, like let's say if you didn't belong to the KitClub, how you can get similar effects using products you have, and blah 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 blah, all those kind of things. Okay, so I just need to check that my filming setup is correct, because once again I moved the studio. I am like a dog that cannot get his lie, or like my schnauzer, and I keep moving the studio. So now I am filming on a phone because the arm for my HD camcorder is too short. So I just quickly want to check, and I'm just going to pause and then I'll be back. Okay, I think that this is okay. I hope that it's okay. Righto. So you guys, of course, the star of the show is the set of Distress watercolor pencils. In the beginning, I thought these were just nonsense because I actually didn't know how to use these things a couple of years ago, and I honestly did not have the time or the inclination to spend time on finding out. But as I am maturing, I am finding that I am interested in how all these things work, and because it's such a small size, and instead of carrying 12 big pads with, obviously you can't do everything with these that you can do with an ink pad, but you can do a lot of techniques with 12 watercolor woodless pencils. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go through the layouts again. So this one was the funnest one for me to make. This is the one that we're going to use the Hedonia Ultra Smooth paper for. Now, I think you have two in your kits, and it is important that you use the Hedonia for this. You could probably use the Munkin as well, which is that off-white one. But yeah, anyway, so this one is just better for watercolor techniques. The water actually sits on top. Then this one was the first one I made, and I did spend a lot of time on this layout, believe it or not, figuring out the techniques, figuring out how I would, because then I didn't have the pattern papers. So when I started with this one, we were only going to use this that you got without the paper pack. So this is very simple. It's just the white cardstock that I colored using two colors of the Distress pencils, which is lovely because you can make your own cardstock. This element here, please don't look too hard for it. I cut this out from this paper. So of course you have loads that you can cut out here, different shapes, different depending on how your eye flows. You can cut more or less. That's all I use this paper for. All the other papers on this layout comes from this Bow Bunny pack. There are 200 pieces in here, and I just wanted to show you everything that I have left. I mean, it's like I could, this is going to go into my art journaling box. I mean, I don't think I'll ever be able to use this up. I mean, there are just hundreds of pieces left. I really wanted to use these fern washi tapes, but they didn't go with any of the projects that I made. So this comprises of lots of little techniques. For instance, you can see here I will show you how to do this. I colored the glitter paper, and then I just punched circles from it. I put the washi butterflies, you know, they are in this pack. So this is, for instance, a washi piece. You can feel the difference. They are thicker than the other papers in there, and I'm actually going to maybe color a fern. So you can see that I just glued onto a cardstock, then I painted it with the watercolor pencils. Same thing here with this clock thing, bell, and then I just colored the beautiful chipboard. So this is very delicate. So I'm just pre-warning you, it's very delicate. And even when you cut it with your finest pair of scissors, it will not cut perfectly because it's just too thin. But it's such a beautiful element, you know, that I've always wanted to use it. And then of course I gave you guys the washi tape. It should be glued onto your packs. And then that is just another washi sticker. And then I actually did some splats on the black cardstock using the watercolor pencils. So you can see that it actually shows off very nicely on the black cardstock. This one was probably so this one I did last, third. This one was the second layout that I made, and I also loved doing this one because there is just a technique element. You each have a piece of watercolor cardstock. This is actually the mixed media pad, the Fabriano one. It's a very good pad. It's got a textured side and a smoother side. Because I just played, and then I thought this looks so nice, I created a custom element, and then I wanted to use the big piece of the tissue paper, and I wasn't going to do this in the beginning. I just created the background collage, and then I thought, no, you know what, I just want to bring in a big photo. I think I've scrapbooked this before, Marius and I. It's the last photo we have together this year before he left for work, and this is just the die cut element that's in your pack that I also just colored, and then of course more of this chipboard, and that's all collage, okay, with a light gesso wash. But I'm going to show you exactly how I created that. And then very simple last page. You know, I've been wanting to use these pattern papers, and especially this one. Every time I put it into the KitClub and then I never use it. But these strips, I actually created because I just started making collages. I wanted to do a collage scrapbook KitClub. So after I had created this sheet, I thought, you know what, I can make it any color that I want. And I just thought it went really well with these papers. So I was so glad that I could still find enough packs for everyone, because originally you were not going to get any pattern papers in the pack. So yeah, I'm so happy about that. That is also the tissue paper that I used, and of course another glitter circle that I used there. Very simple. And then also another Munkin cardstock that I just matted the photos on. Of course you can color yours any color that you want, but I liked the cream for the background. Okay, so let's start. Where does one start? First of all, I'm going to talk about collaging. Maybe I should first talk, let's first talk about collaging. So you have a lot of different cardstocks in your pack. I want to talk about the difference between the Hedonia and the normal white El Toro or the white litho board. As you can see, there's a big difference in the color. So this is the Hedonia. It's an ultra smooth paper, and it is not coated. You can see there's the Hedonia. You can definitely see the difference. So it's not a coated paper, but the weave of the paper enables you to do some techniques on it, and the water does not just get sucked in. Okay, it is quite an expensive paper. This is a 300 gram, and this is also a 300 gram. So they feel very similar, but you can clearly see the difference in the color. And you can also, if you This is very smooth, the litho, but this is like, I don't know, very, very smooth. Okay, so when we do collaging, we don't necessarily want to do it on an expensive paper like this one. So the Hedonia is exclusive for the watercolor technique layout. And then should you want to make more elements like these and you don't have proper watercolor paper, you can definitely use the Hedonia for that. But let me not talk too much. Okay, so I first started off creating this collage piece, and this collage piece I simply created by tearing papers from old books. Now you can use any old books that you have. I have a very precious little old Collins English Gem Dictionary. Sorry, I didn't give you guys any of these. It was first published in 1911. This one was printed in 1965. I just bought it for like, I don't know how much, probably like 40 Rand or 30 Rand at the local secondhand bookstore. Then someone dropped off a bunch of books at the shop. I grabbed one. It's like an encyclopedia. And then I also have, this is just a book. Okay, and it has a different texture. Then I don't know what I did with this book. It's also just an old storybook. When you do collaging, make sure that you are kind of, you don't take books that has nasty language and like sex scenes and things like that. I'll never forget many years ago, about 20 years ago, Yuvalna came to do a class here in Jeffreys Bay and she forgot to bring an old book with. She says she bought one at the airport and then it was like a romance one. And as she was handing out the pages, we were like reading and thinking, oh, okay, I'll never forget that. So I just need to see that this thing is still filming. Okay. And yeah, so just make sure when you do that. So I would take some time and tear the pieces. Don't make them too small because then you're going to glue for forever. You can just tear them randomly. And we are going to use, believe it or not, a glue stick. Now, I have tested many glue sticks and I have to tell you that the one that I found that stood up the best for against the getting wet and things like that was the Uhu stick. Now I had to go buy one at P&A. They're about 60 Rand. I did first try, we sell the Croxley Create, but I mean they're like 10 bucks. But when they get wet, so they're not washable. Okay, I mean it says washable, but it doesn't, that washable doesn't mean that you can wash the glue. And it will stay glued. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Maybe if you use a lot, but I just gave up after a while because it just frustrated me too much. So I did glue all of it, all of this with the Croxley, but then after I had added the wet techniques, they came loose. So I had to wait a day because I wasn't going to start all over. And then I had to adhere everything using the soft gel. Or gel medium. So you can use any kind of gel medium. You can use the Distress, you can use Golden, you can use any brand. This is the normal Dala, which is probably my favorite. I like this, but it's I found that it's a little bit resistant to if I then want to add product to it. So I'm not saying that that's everyone's experience, but yeah. So okay, so to start, for those of you who've never done collaging, I mean we used to do it when we were kids. I don't know who can remember. You literally need any piece of paper. You can do it on typing paper. You can. I have the craft, so you can do it onto this paper. Make sure you get the edges, and then you just need to glue a piece of paper down. Now, you guys, there is a tool that I bought that I don't know where it is at the moment. It's actually a catalyst tool, which is like a scraper, but it is not a scraper. Okay, here we go. They are very expensive. This one was 156 Rand. And then I have another one that is a bit bigger. So I am not good with credit cards. This I like. The other one that I have is flatter and it goes like that in your hand. But I cleaned it and now I don't know where I put it. So I recommend, after making many flops, that if you are going to use a glue stick, use something like this, or use a credit card at least to spread it flat. And then you are simply going to continue and get the centers as well, because you want to, you can even do it upside down like that, because you want to get it flat. Okay, I only used this when I started creating the page of Marius and I. I think you guys got this in a KitClub last year, but it's just so nice. It just adds a little bit of interest, and because it already has glue on, that also helps. The only thing about if you flatten it, just got to make sure that you don't tear it. I also took out some of my washi tapes because I thought, yeah, I've got washi tapes and some of them are ancient. Like I think this one is probably 15 years old. You know, these products do have a shelf life. Like I don't even know if this one will still come off. Yeah, no, really. Okay, so I'm not even going to go that route. And then, of course, I also used some of these elements, okay, that were in your embellishment pack, the bow bunny. Now, apart from using a glue stick, you can definitely use a brush and gel medium. Okay, when you are going to use a brush and gel medium, make sure that you use a brush that you can dedicate to this purpose, because I have ruined many brushes. And I would also recommend that you work then on a craft sheet, or I think I've had this pad since I was a child, maybe. It's, you know, it's one of those big pads. So you want to get enough gel medium onto the back. It dries quite quickly. And then you want to place it down. Because we are going to seal this, you can just as well use the gel medium. Now, if you are going to put the gel medium down first, and then you want to put down your paper, please bear in mind that the areas where it's already been absorbed into the paper, in those areas, of course it will not stick. Like, look at that. Okay, so you must make sure that this is adhered. Otherwise, you're going to have those unsightly pieces of paper sticking up. Unless, of course, you don't mind that. But you can see already there how it's wobbling now. Don't get scared when it wobbles. When it dries completely, it should flatten out. Sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on the weather. Here in Jeffreys Bay, when it's very humid, it takes quite some time to completely dry out, and sometimes, honestly, it never dries out because we have such a high humidity. So those are the two ways that you can do this. You can use a heat tool. I can tell you from experience, don't, because you will wobble your paper, and then it will frustrate you even more if you don't like wobbly elements. But of course, if you're in a hurry and you must move along, then you can definitely use your heat tool. but for these projects I actually did not use my heat tool because I felt that I would just rather let it dry naturally. Okay, and even though I used my glue stick there, I'm going to seal everything just because. I'm sealing it with my gel medium, and then I am going to put it aside to dry. Now you are going to repeat this process with the white, not the Hedonia, but with your normal white cardstock when you do this double page. So I first adhered the 2 pages together, and then I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to have a centerpiece. And then I just added pieces of paper. So instead of having a single, you will just have a double, because this one is just for techniques. So you're going to keep one. You're going to create one that we can cut strips from, and we're going to use the walnut crystals just to create an aged effect on that. And then this one that I did first, I actually used some of the Distress watercolor pencils there, and I also used a blending tool. I wanted to see what that would look like, and I also gave it a whitewash with gesso. Okay, that was just my experimental page. Here, I just want to come back to this one. So I'm going to do all my testing for you on this sheet once it is dry. But for now, I'm going to put it to one side so that we can move on to coloring something. So as you can see with the gel medium, just putting it into water simply really isn't enough. You have to get that gel medium. It's an adhesive. So you have to get that out of your paint, out of your brush. Please don't forget to do that. I have ruined many brushes, and I also do recommend that if you can, that you invest in a brush cleaner. I've got the Zelen one. It's just maybe I'll quickly go fetch that so you can just see what I'm talking about. And then it's no use having this water with a gel medium in when we are going to move on to watercoloring, because you will pick up some of the gel pieces and it will transfer to your work, and that is the last thing that you want. Okay, so I think we gave everyone, I don't know, a couple of years ago, we gave you all like a little heart brush cleaner. That's also good because you scratch your brush in it. But for watercolor brushes, they are a bit more sensitive. And here's my other Catalyst tool. This is a very nice one. It's heavy, but it's lovely to add like texture paste and things through stencil. Okay, so this is the brush cleaner that I use. Zelen, you can see I've had it for a long time. It's leaking, lid's not on properly. I've had it for a long time, and I literally only use a little bit. So if I'm busy with acrylic paint or something like that, and with my blending brushes, I actually use it for these stencil brushes, and I also use it for these blending brushes. Yeah, so I just put a little bit on, I leave it in there, and then I will rinse the brush and rinse this. I'm going to rinse it now, close it properly, and then you know that your brush is clean for the next time. Okay, and the way that I actually realized this was once I wanted to paint something, and I thought my brush was clean because it looked clean, but then right here at the back there was some pigment stuck. So this is now the brush that I use for gel medium, for things like that. Otherwise I just contaminate every single thing. Okay, so let's take out our Distress watercolor pencils. Okay, So, what does one do with these things? In the beginning, I used to think that to watercolor with them, I actually just am going to cut. So you also have this piece in your boxes. I'm just going to cut it down to 4 inches. So I have a small piece. I used to think that with a watercolor pencil, you take one and then you color. Okay, and then you just take a brush and then you do that. Okay, which is kind of what you do, but I used to get these streaks. As you can see, there still are some streaks. Okay, so that I was like, no man, these things are, they just don't work. Subsequently, I have learned that there is a right way and a wrong way. So it literally is just watercolor pigment that have been compressed into a pencil shape. So I started using them a little bit differently. I started by shaving it. Okay, so it's water soluble. So what will happen, I'm just going to put some water into all of these. Not clean, as you can see. It's got some walnut crystal in there. So what will happen, the pigment will dissolve. And once it is dry, as with all watercolor, the water will evaporate. So I am in the process of, I'm going to find a well or a palette that is big enough to keep all my watercolor distress pencils, because this is now dry, but this is that. And if I need to reactivate it, I'm just going to use it like a normal watercolor. Does that make sense? That thing I need to cut off, because you can see I've even used this one a lot. And let's get a blue. I'm going to wipe this one. But don't fear, it's not the only way that you can use this. Many ways to use this. There's that one. And I think I want the yellow, the scattered straw. Okay. There we go. I'll say. And the festive berries. Okay. And I actually want to mix the little bit of the mowed lawn. Okay, so there I have my palette. Now, obviously it needs to dissolve. So it takes a little bit of time if you have a big blob in there like I have. But now we are closer to having a watercolor. Now, when I did the KitClub, I was using it like this. So I was wetting my brush and then I was just painting. There we go. And if you need a lighter color, then you just need to add more water, as per all watercolor paint. And if you want to add some depth, you just, as with all watercolor paint. Okay, and that's also how I decided to do the swatches. Like you can see here, I sat down and I thought, okay, I want to see what these look like, so that I always have an idea of the colors, because remember, they distress, so they dry a bit more muted than what they would look if they are wet. and also the paper that you use will have an effect on the way that the color is transferred. So if you're using a white paper, obviously the colors are going to be a bit brighter. If you are using another kind of watercolor paper that might be an off-white, then obviously it's going to be a bit more muted. Okay, so you can see there I have my shades, and as you can see here on in my little palette, the paints are dissolving very nicely. There we go. Okay, so that is now a mixed color. It's between the evergreen bow and the mowed lawn, so obviously I'm not gonna, oh, I even have red in there, so that's now a new color. Okay, as you can see there. So I also thought that we must look at maybe blending a little bit. So if you wanted to make a new kind of green, you would have to pick up those two colors. And that would be like an olivey, I don't know what kind of green that would be, but that is a very muted, funny looking color. Obviously, the more you add yellow, the more it'll become like an olivey green. So you can get all kinds of shades, as you can see, which is very nice. Okay, so you're not limited to, it's just like normal watercolor paint. Look at that. Whatever that new color is, we've just created a new color there. There's also a new color, as you can see. So the sky is the limit, and this is such a nice set because you can really, I don't know, play around and just create all kinds of different shades. So that's just a little bit on making mud and seeing how they work. They really are just watercolors in a pencil shape. And as with everything that I always teach you guys, oh, that's a nice gray, look at that. Always wait until it is dry before you decide what the color is finally gonna look like. Okay, because if you don't, you might really get a wrong impression of what the color is going to look like. You can do all the same techniques that you do with normal watercolor, or even with picking up all-purpose inks and things like that. It's just a pigment in a pencil form. Okay, anyway, that's enough fooling around. I'm going to put that to one side, and I'm also going to clean that because it's very dirty now. Okay, and then there you can see I've got that little palette thing. I'm probably going to use that again, but not for now. Okay, so let's quickly see how far this is. It's almost dry, so I'm going to give this a thin layer of gesso. Now I'm going to do half with gesso and I'm going to do half with nothing, and then just sprinkle the walnut crystals on it. I must just find my walnut crystals on my messy desk here. I had it all nicely put out. There's the walnut crystals. Okay, so we've been using normal walnut crystal for forever, and the infusions have really, paper artsy have just made it popular again, because it's just such a phenomenal product that, and I mean, we used to have to import it at some stage because you just couldn't get it locally. Now this is just normal gesso, normal acrylic gesso, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to use it here, and you want to just create a wash. So gesso prepares any surface for the acceptance of ink, and I don't want to cover everything. I just need to give it like that milky see-through look, so that I can actually apply some ink to it or paint, and that it will accept it but sit kind of on top, if that makes any sense. Okay, same rule as with your gel medium. Do not assume that your brush is clean. Make sure that it really is clean. And as you all know, gesso is the Italian word for chalk. Okay, so that is what I did on the one side, just to show you guys. Okay, so here I covered it with the gesso. You can see there. You can see the white there. And on this project, you can also see the muted tones, and there you can actually see the gesso. Okay, it just tinted the page very slightly, and that is just because it gave off some of the ink, very slightly so, from these papers. You can see it has like a slight grayish tint. Okay, now to get this look here, I'm going to sprinkle some of the walnut crystals, and then I am going to wet it. I'm going to do two different ways. I'm first going to wet the page, and then I'm going to sprinkle, and then I'm going to sprinkle and wet the page. Okay, so if you first sprinkle, you guys, you need very, very little of these things. So I'm first sprinkling here, and now I'm going to wet the page. Okay, and here I am wetting the page first, and now I'm going to sprinkle. You can use anything. Here's a little brush that I sometimes use, so you can just flick the brush, and the crystals will dissolve into the water. Okay, so you don't want to make big blobs. You just want to sprinkle the crystals in. Now, someone asked me the other day, can you use this as a paint? Of course you can. Let's quickly see what happens if I put a few crystals there and I wet it. There you've just got a very nice love. It always dries lighter. Can you see how the crystals are reacting with the water? It's a beautiful effect. You can also just dab, dab, dab. Just don't put this wet brush back into your crystals. You can do beautiful techniques with it. You can add some more water. And the best advice I can give you is just to leave it to activate. Give it an opportunity to do its own thing. Go have some tea, walk away. Normally dries, it takes some time to dry. It's cloudy today, it's rainy, it's windy. So this is at least going to take an hour or two. But then you should end up with something that looks like this. Now I am going to pause the video and I will be back. Okay, so while we wait for that piece to dry, I'm going to show you how I created this background. Now, to create this background, you will need your Hedonia smooth paper, okay? And then you are going to need some painter's tape, I prefer painter's tape, so I mean you can use whatever you want to use. And we are going to tape it down onto our work surface. The reason for that is that you want it to stay as flat as possible. Now, I'm not too worried about whether or not I have the same width all around, but I'm going to tape it. Okay. So it's easy if I work on my cutting mat because I can kind of see that I'm keeping it relatively. So here's the trick, is relatively straight. Not that that really matters because we're going to be making some waves now. Okay. And now I want to tape down random pieces. Okay, so everywhere where you see these doodles are where I put random pieces of tape. So I literally took the tape like that, and you can decide how you want to start. Maybe something like that, and then something like that. And one there in the middle. One there. There is no right or wrong to do this. You are just going to create some divisions so that you can use your paints and just have fun and create a custom background. Now, I already knew which photo I wanted to use. And I took my color inspiration from the photo. But for this one, I was thinking maybe I'll just do some yellows and blues and greens, okay? But I mean, obviously you can choose any color that you want to. And it is literally, I'm going to show you now how simple it is. Now, first choose your colors. I'm going to use Shabby Shutters, Mowed Lawn, got Evergreen Bow. I'm definitely going to be using the Chipped Sapphire. And then I think I also want to go for the Wilted Violet. I do like this scattered straw as well. Okay, so you can literally pick up the paint like I've shown you directly from the pencil. That is what I did. Or you can sharpen it or scrape it onto a little palette. Now you'll see that your Distress watercolor pencils comes with this little plastic thing that you can use as a palette as well. So for this exercise, we can literally just do that. Now, in order to use this little thing as a palette, we can shave, let's call it shave, some color onto it. I'm going to use both methods. Okay. And then I always say, not that I always do it, go from light to dark. I really don't always do it. Sometimes the moment is just too big. Okay, and Evergreen Bow. I think I'm going to put that one in here. And I'm going to put the blue one here. You can use a shaving blade or whatever you want to use. I just have this craft knife, which I really love. I do have one of those small little ones, but I don't know where I put it. Okay. So I'm not going to mist because then I'm going to get paint all over. You can use whatever. I wouldn't go for a too thin brush, okay, because that would just be too thin. I would go for a wider brush so that you can fill in the color. This is a number 12 and that is a number 10. But whatever you are comfortable with. And then of course you're going to go for, you're first going to wet your paper just a little bit. Okay. That just makes the paint run a bit better. And now you can activate your shadings. And you are just putting down the color. Just putting down the color. So let's say I didn't want to do it like that. You can literally pick up the color directly from the pencil. Now this is just a cover for the pencil. Underneath this it is pure pigment. There we go. You can see no difference. Okay. And now I'm going to move on to my next color, which is the Shabby Shutters. I forgot now to wet this. So what's nice if you wet it is just that how the colors kind of flow into one another. And then once again, if you are not too keen on doing it that way, we can go directly onto the pencil and add the paint directly. So be patient with your pencil. Sometimes it does take one or two strokes for the pigment to activate, and you can of course go in now and you can make it as light or as dark as you want. You can do things like that to add some interest. You do not have to know anything about watercolor painting to do this. Nothing. It is literally just putting down color. Once again, I forgot. So the thing is, you don't want to do that, okay, because that will just give you stripes. I mean, unless of course you like that. And you can see that I'm touching so that the colors bleed into one another. Once again, remember that it's got the same properties as it is a distress. So if you add water, it's going to react. So you can add splatters to your heart's content. I need to first wet this. And always remember that the secret to watercolor is water. So you want to have water, and the pigment will react with however much water you are adding to your pigment. The intensity and how it will move, that is what you want to do. Okay, so I know my water is not that clean anymore, but it's okay because I'm in kind of the same color family. So I'm not making mud. Can you see how the water sits on top of this paper? It really is a lovely, lovely paper. I love this paper. Okay, so next we've got the evergreen bow. These little dots you can see is where my pigment just hasn't been dissolved properly. So it looks like it's little pieces of, oh, I like how that is reacting. And then of course you can do the same thing with every color. I don't even know if I'm going to use I think I'm going to go for the purple before I go for the dark blue. This is Wilted Violet, so it is such a pretty color. Oops, some splitters there. That is how I did the splats on the other project. And there obviously I've got some pink pigment that comes from this one. And then I'm going to finish off with my yellow again, which obviously might be a little tainted now. So like I said, you can use any color combination. Let your photo guide you, or just create a fun background. This is such an awesome technique for a journal page. You know, if journaling is your thing, I'm really getting into more journaling. And you can see I'm just to get the paint to move, I'm just adding some water here and there just to bring some interest into the page. And then I'm going to leave this because it's glued down to my cutting mat. So I can't do anything unless you're going to do this on a different surface. Now you can of course lift some of this excess water. You can definitely lift it, which will, because my pigment's already sitting at the bottom, it'll just be lighter then, okay, because obviously some of the pigment is in the water, and that also gives you some interesting effects. So if you are a little bit in a hurry, once again, I am not going to use my heat tool because I want this to dry as flat as possible. Of course, if you do use the heat tool, there are some remedies. You can put it under heavy stuff overnight. I actually did put this layout, I put under my cutting mat overnight because I really wet this. It was very, very wet. And there is your background. So let's dry this and then we'll move on to the next technique. Okay, so this is really dry enough for me. We're going to peel off the tape now. It is important to note that sometimes when you peel off the tape, it will bring some of the paper with. That normally happens if your paper is not completely dry. And it also depends on the kind of fibers, so the way that the paper has been produced. Okay, there's a lot of factors. I have the best results with the blue painter's tape. There's also a neon green one that you can buy at Builders Express or wherever. But this one I really particularly like. I think it's a Build It brand. We also do stock it at the shop if you don't have a Build It, or because I went to the paint shop because my parents-in-law are busy moving and I had to buy some paint because we're painting the house, and I asked them, I said, do you have painter's tape? And they said no, they just sell masking tape. Now this is at a specialty paint store, and they only sell normal masking tape. So normally your problem comes in here where we have really wet the paper. So what can you do to mitigate this? You can take a normal hairdryer, or you can take your heat tool and you can simply just heat up the tape a little bit. You can sort of see there how quickly it is being removed. Now, the reason I don't really like using the heat tool is because I had a very nice flat paper, and now that I added some heat to it, it immediately wants to go in all kinds of directions. But you've got to weigh up the cost. So I want to see how far we can get with this one. I'm glad I did different colors. I don't always keep all the tapes. This serves no purpose unless I'm going to make another paper like this. And I mean, I think these rolls of tape are like, I don't know, 30 bucks or 40 rand or something like that. I think the neon green one is about 100 rand, but I don't buy that one anymore. It's just too expensive. Okay, so now what are we going to do with all these wide open spaces? That is the big question. So you know how you pay a lot of money for these beautiful scrapbook papers that have all these doodles on them. You know, those quirky little papers that have little triangles and circles and @ signs and simply dots. We're going to make our own. So there we go. That was relatively successful, or incident free. So we are going to make our own doodle paper. You guys, it is the easiest thing to do. Really, when I first did the first line, I thought, no, you know, what am I doing? This is crazy. But then I just got into it, and I absolutely loved doing it. Okay, so you're going to need a pen. I have a variety of pens here. I've got my Faber-Castell, I've got some microns. You get a lot of different waterproof India ink or archival ink pens. So make sure that it's waterproof, because we might have to add some more paint or something to this. Now, first of all, you are going to kind of outline your, I need to find my glasses. This one I tried to write with on wet acrylic paint the other day, and I knew when I was doing it that it's not the right thing to do. Okay, so this is what I started off with. I simply kind of outlined every white space, just because, just freehand, nothing to it. And I did find it very stressful in the beginning, and then I found it extremely relaxing. Okay, so that pen is very thin. Let's go over. That's a 0.3. That's a 0.4. I think my favorite is a 0.5. Okay, so you can immediately see the difference between the 0.3, the Faber-Castell, and this is a 0.5. Okay, so you're simply going to continue to do this. I missed some of them because I got very excited, so I started doodling before I outlined all of the white spaces. I do think if you want consistency, first do what I'm doing now, and just kind of, you're just basically framing, giving yourself like a frame to work in. Now when you're finished with that, you are simply going to doodle. You can make little diagonal stripes. You can make hundreds of little circles and fill a whole space full of circles. I did that. There, I did it. And I actually did the background, then I put the photo on there. I even repeated that. You can make little triangles, you can make zigzags. I tried to do swirlies here, but I mean, they are ridiculous. And then I just ended up making like @ signs. Here I've got a little stripe, 3 dots, a little stripe, 3 dots. Then I've got crisscrosses. Here I just filled in the lines, and there I just simply made little squibbles. Here I made like little waves with dots in between. And then when I ran out of ideas, I just made straight lines, and then I just repeated. So here, let's do zigzags. And then you can even put little dots in. I really do need my glasses. And it is just because there is absolutely no purpose other than, and if you're a perfectionist, use a stencil or a template. This is not supposed to stress you out. It is just supposed to be fun. You can see now I'm getting it's just supposed to be fun. Here you can literally just do, you know, just to have something that's a bit more solid. And you can just fill in all these white spaces, or not. You can just leave them as is. Now, when I was done, I decided that I wanted to frame my page. You can use a ruler. So I did. I think my original page, I even tore the outer tapes. That's entirely up to you. Go in, or you can just keep it straight. I think the nice thing about the Distress watercolor crayons, pencils, is that we know the palette. So for those of us who have been scrapbooking for many, many years, we're familiar with these colors. And if you already own the inks, you know, it kind of is nice to have something that you can, you know, the inks are lovely, but to use them as a watercolor paint, you always have to squish them on a surface, and then you have to wet them. Now I quickly want to talk about the way that I did the brown around the edges here. I actually used the Distress Ground Espresso that is in your pencil set, but it was too light for me, so that's when I added some of the crystals, like I showed you earlier, how we can just paint with them. And it is a good idea to do this on a separate palette because it is brown, and we kind of would like to keep the brown pure. Now I just want to tell you what this is. This is actually one of my Tim Holtz, my glass media mat. I destroyed part of it by washing it too rigorously, so I just cut it into smaller pieces. So now if I need to do something like this, where I don't really want a whole I don't need to mess up a whole palette, I actually just mix it on here. Okay. So I do want to mix the two browns because the walnut crystal has a very distinct and different look to it. Oopsie, you can see there I already sprinkled some of the powder on my page. Now I want to, my water is dirty, I know, I should have cleaned it in the break. So I'm just making my own watercolor mix here. And then I went in and I just added it to frame my page. Because I do like a frame, and I also like a dark frame. Mine was a bit wider than this, but that really doesn't matter. And because this always dries a little bit lighter, I did do more than one layer. Of course, you can use anything else to frame this, whatever you prefer. And I think the great thing about the Distress line is that because it is distressed, it's supposed to have that kind of vintage feel. So the browns, it's not as if they really clash, you know. So here you can maybe just go in if you want to darken it, and then you just leave it to dry, and it will have those kind of two-tone light and dark that we love about the watercolor effect. You can see it's just basically moving on its own, and I'm just kind of adding it there. Okay, so there you have it. You just need to wait until it's dry, and Bob's your uncle. And then of course you can do a double page if you wanted to. You can let it run down that way. If you want to turn it vertically, I mean, that would actually be very, very nice. I think a couple of years ago we also did a project, but we did, I think everybody got a set of proper watercolor paints, I think, the Vicky Bouton ones, and we also did a similar kind of technique, but I really do like this. I hope you like it too. Okay, so our collage is dry, and I wanted to just expand a little bit on this, not get everything full of walnut crystal. So remember I explained to you that for this project I simply cut strips. So this would be this. I cut the strips and then I just painted them. So what you will do, you will just choose a color. Let's go with something I have here. So let's say you're going to be doing a masculine page. I think in that paper pack there is a paper that has green and blue. I could be wrong, but I think something like that. So you can just add some watercolor pencils. What can be easier? And then you just let it dry. You can either cut your strips first and then color them, or you can color it first and trim them, whichever way you prefer. And then what I did with the other one, so what I did with the one where I actually added the gesso, I didn't use any of this, but I kind of used the technique on this page, okay, where I created the collage, and then I added the gesso, and then I went in and I did exactly what I did here, except I went in with a big brush, okay, a huge brush. If you don't have a brush that's this big, you can just use a smaller brush, and I literally just wanted to add a color to the background to set the tone. You guys, that's all I did here to the background, and I let it dry. Okay, remember that it's white, so you can see you would have this is obviously on the craft paper, and I just let it dry naturally, once again, like I dried it here, and then when it was dry I started adding in, or I started scrapbooking the layout. Now I'm going to show you now how I created all these elements. I just wanted to show you all the backgrounds first. Now where's my little towel? Now we can move on to some of the elements. So in your embellishment pack you have hundreds of little items. Oh, here's a strip. You can see that I cut that left over. You have a lot of elements, a lot. Like I said, you would never use these up, and you can feel which ones, like the difference between this and this one, you can somewhere feel and you can see the difference. So this is the washi, and of course you can separate that, and you can, for me, I like to take something like this and then adhere it to a piece of paper, and then you can cut it out. So let's use the leaf, because I really wanted to use the leaf but I didn't. I used the butterflies. Is it necessary for extra adhesive? I hear someone ask. I'm just kidding, but I would ask that. Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't think you can go wrong by adding some extra adhesive, but I don't know that it's really necessary. I didn't. Okay, so that's entirely up to you. Now I altered my washi elements, like you can see here. That's exactly what I did with this leaf, and then I just painted it. Okay, doesn't have to be complicated. And remember, because it's watercolor, it is so forgiving. So you can take a thinnish brush and you can pick up some color from your crayons and you can just paint it. And I mean, that will obviously dry. And remember, if you want it to be a little bit like, I don't know, like a winter fern or something like that, then you can make your own palette and just leave it to dry naturally. You know, that's always the best for watercolor. And then once you fussy cut this, you can simply ink the edges using any ink that you choose. And you don't have to, you can cut as perfect or as imperfect. It's entirely up to you. You can also paint the whole thing. If you have painted too much and you want to lift some ink, you can just lift some. You guys, and you just leave that to dry. Okay, and then you fussy cut it and you've got your own custom embellishment for your page. Now, I want to show you how I colored the chipboard, and I want to show you how I created this element right here. So you all remember that I cut, when we just started, I took my piece of watercolor paper and I cut off some of it. So we're going to repeat the technique that I did with the multicolored paper. With this one, we are going to tape our watercolor paper to our, you can work on your cutting mat or you can work on your craft sheet. That is entirely up to you. I would also first maybe trim it down to the size that you want it, and you know, so that if you wanted to make a smaller element, then you can make a smaller element. But you should have enough. You each got, I think, it's about an A4, I think, if I remember correctly. I cut all of them. Or no, it's actually half of an A4. I don't know. It's going to be, you should be able to make 2 4x6 elements, so whatever that size will be. It's an 8x6 or something. Yes. Okay, so there we go. And I'm going to follow exactly the same technique that I used with the when we did the big page. Okay, so for this one, however, I think I'm going to use these colors just because, and you are going, I wet my whole page. So here I don't have the washi tape, and I'm going to just go in. And go over to the second color. Of course you can scrape the pigment off like I showed you. And you can add a little bit of highlights, darker, lighter. So something that's very interesting with the water distress watercolor pencils is that the pinks seem to have some kind of milky layer. I've got 2 or 3 sets, and I found this with all the pinks is that they actually, it's almost as if it's a muted milky, I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, it's like it's just muted milky. I know I'm repeating, but I really don't know how to describe it. Okay, and then the last one here we'll do, what is this? It's Festive Berries. Okay, and then obviously if you want to add some darker areas in there or not, you can now of course go back and you can fill in a little bit. It's just a background, just a background. And once again, we need to leave this to dry. Now, remember what I said, the beauty about the distress is if you add water, you will of course get these beautiful splatter effects. Now, I did not do that on my one. But I thought I would just do it on this one because I remembered that that is really something that you can do. Okay, so we need to leave this to dry once again. Yeah, so as you can see, this technique video is not something that you can just do in like an hour or two and then it's over and done with. You need to leave the elements to dry completely. The other one took about 3 hours, and I suspect I might only be back. It's already 8:15 in the evening, and I'll probably continue filming tomorrow. Okay, so it's about 5:30 in the morning, and let's move on. So as you can see, this has dried absolutely beautifully and it's nice and flat. And let's just see how the tape peels off from this paper. So you can see I'm saving these at the moment. At some point, you know, you throw them away. But for now, I am trying, because they become less and less tacky as well. You know, if you can reuse them, and always remember that you can also do the jean or the clothing method where you kind of, you know, rub it onto your pants or clothes. Jeans are very good for this, to just make it a little bit less tacky. Okay, so you can see some of the water went under there, but that really doesn't bother me. And what I'm going to do now, let me just show you on the layout what we are working towards. So this one is considerably bigger than the one that I did use, but that's fine. So I then simply found something that was a circle. For this one, I think we can use this lid. And I'm going to show you what I did. I simply drew half a circle. And then I took a little bit of brown paint just to give it kind of a I don't know, accentuated. And it just, that is what happened. After I finished this one, it had that yellow streak in the middle, and I thought it would look nice to make some dots there and create an accent with it. So if that's what you want to do with yours, you can replicate that. So sorry, I am really struggling with my light in the new setup. I saw that I had that light reflection on the photograph, so I've actually changed the lighting, but I can also see that that is not the way to go. Anyway, and then remember we had this little piece from the previous insert, so you can just reactivate that if you want to, or you can go back to your pencil and just give it a little bit of a, I don't know what you want to call that, a halo effect, or you don't even have to do that with a pen. You can do it with a watercolor pencil. You can even use your distress markers, your distress watercolor pencils. There we go. And then, oh yes, I did get new water, but I see I've left it at the sink. Okay. And now I want to just show you, if you wanted to use your tissue paper for any elements, there's, oh sorry, I've got a little frog this morning. There's an easy way to do this, and then there's a more difficult way to cut these, the tissue papers, the collage papers. So the easiest way for me normally is to wet a brush. Okay, I need to go fetch my water. This is going to drive me crazy. Sorry, just wait 1 second. I see I actually rinsed it. I'm not even going to pause the video at this stage, otherwise you'll have 59 technique videos for April. I really need to get maybe someone professional in here. So for me, the easiest way to do this is to wet a brush, and then let's say I want to use this butterfly. I'm going to outline it. You can do this with a napkin as well. It is the easiest way to quote unquote cut a tissue or collage paper. Can you see there? And now you can just very delicately, it's very difficult for me to be delicate, you can just softly tear it. If you don't have enough, didn't wet it enough, you'd have to add a little bit more water, and there you've got your element that you want to use. Okay, and now remember this paper that we used? You can simply glue it down. You can use your collage medium. Let's use that this morning. There's my brush, because I used the gel medium. You can just pop it down there. And obviously that needs to dry, and then you can fussy cut it. Didn't put adhesive there underneath it. You can actually see there. Let's just get this one sorted. I hope it will stick. Okay. You can, of course, also cut it. Now, I want to talk about scissors quickly. When I started scrapbooking in 2007, I bought this pair of scissors, Honeybee. what does it say there? Tip is sharp. Okay. And I did pay, I think, about 150 Rand for this pair of scissors. Now, I've had it 19 years. It is the most brilliant scissors that I have ever owned. The reason I don't show these a lot on camera is because we could never get them again. So it's no use me telling you that behind the scenes I'm actually using these for every fussy cutting thing. They are just my go-tos. But over the years, you can see they have worn out. And what happened was I once decided to clean them. So I took undo. And the rubber started disintegrating. Now that doesn't really bother me because they are truly still, I mean, just the way they glide. I know Katia Creations makes a similar looking one, but yeah, it's not the same. So the pink ones that I use, that I love so much, they have the same tip. But because they don't have the black Teflon blades, I mean, I do love them. The handle is fantastic. So I would love to have these in this, but they're not available like that yet. And then look at this. EK Tools came out with a remake. Now they are 306 Rand at the moment, but when I saw they released these, I had to order them. Okay, so these are the Tim Holtz Tonic large snips, which you also know I love. And the purposes for the big tonic snips are, of course, slightly different than what you would use smaller scissors for. But there we go, just look at that. I am thrilled to have a new pair because... So these are 19 years old. These you've just seen me take out of the packet. Look at that. Okay. It says there, EK Tools trademark. Okay. So to cut tissue paper, so that's cutting with my old EK scissors. And I'm just doing this to prove a point. That's cutting with the new scissors. Cuts really well, but it's not the ideal tool to cut this with. These scissors are better. Just because of the way the blade is designed. So it's got a bit of a tooth. So if you don't want to go with the method of using the brush, I do recommend that you just get a big pair of shears. I talk about these big scissors a lot. I love them. But for specific purposes, as you can see, for cutting something like this, that is just the best. And I also do have a pair in the kitchen. Yeah, no, these are very good to have around. And of course, I will still be using this. I mean, after 19 years, you guys, look, the lid hasn't faded. Yes, that has cracked because I probably stepped on it. But this was, I mean, what lasts almost 20 years? Nothing. But I'm thrilled to have a new pair. And I'm looking forward. I think an improvement here is that it only has one little hole, because I used to always have to wonder. No, I didn't have to wonder. Oh, yes, I did. I still would have to. Which side is it for, the small little knob or the big one? So I would still have to consider that. It still only has one hole. Okay, anyway, there we go. That's just some nonsense about scissors. Okay, but you can see that there really is no difference. Let me just glue this one down as well and maybe do a better job than the previous one. Go back to the collage medium. Let me just really do a better job. go. Okay, so just something to notice. Last night I glued this down, the washi. You can see that it would be beneficial to rather use an adhesive as well, whether it's a glue stick or whatever. This paper is very porous, so it's very absorbent, and as it's drying, you can see that it wasn't even wet last night, but because we had wet stuff on it, it actually pulls the moisture. That is how it works, and that is why it also wobbles a lot more than other papers. You can see we used the glue stick. I obviously didn't get that corner. The rest of it is really holding up. When I used the Croxley stick, everything just came undone. And here's that leaf that we painted. Remember? So I think it came out really, really nicely. I hope this one's going to hold up. We're going to be cutting that shortly. So obviously this has a lot of drying time in the techniques. I've got some other elements here that we need to color and paint. Remember, we spoke about the chipboard. I'm actually going to get out the glass mat. Got the baby one here next to me. I hope it doesn't glare too much. I can see it's going to glare. Oh, let me move that light. Let me get up and see if there's a big glare. I can see a little bit of a glare, but I hope it's not too much. You know, we lived in a little rental house for many, many years until lockdown. And my husband did the perfect setup for me there. There was a little corner, and anyway, he built a custom, just like a triangle piece of, like a desk, and then it had fluorescent lights, and I put a sheet over the fluorescent lights. It was a wonderful setup, so simple. And I remember 10 years ago or 11 years ago when I started filming, I imported these lights that I had space for in the corners, and I've never been able to replicate that setup because of the corner that I had. It was just in some little corner in the house, a built-on addition from the lounge that the owners of the house had added. But I've just never been able to replicate that area. And yeah, okay. So to color the chipboard, so I did yellows, and for this layout, I did the blues. I'm thinking I want to use this photo of my granny that I've had. She passed away in 2002, I think, and this is one of the last photographs I have of her. It stays on my desk, but it's time to find a home for Granny. And I was thinking last night when I did this one, I grabbed the photo from the desk, and I think I want to scrapbook this. I might use a different composition than the original. Doesn't really matter. Maybe I'll just put her here, and yeah, I might do this on camera. So I wanted to show you how I'm going to color the chipboard, and I'm also going to do a photo mat so that you can see how I did those, and I'm going to color. So I'm just going to create one layout, you know, where I will use most of these elements. Righto, so I'll be back. I need to go and get ready for the day while this video uploads. Okay, so let's do some photo mats, and we are going to be painting this as well as this element. To paint the photo mat, you simply need to choose what color you would like to make your photo mat. So I think here for my granny, I'm going to make a purple one. And then if you wanted to round the corners, I would recommend that you first round the corners. Otherwise, you might have to go in again. And then you obviously do not have to paint the whole piece of cardstock, you can literally just paint the edges. And then of course you need to put it to one side so that it can dry. And once again, you can make your own color. See, I want to get that tone. So you simply do that. Cannot be easier to create your own cardstock. I've always loved doing things like this. You know, I lived on a farm when I started scrapbooking, and then obviously, I mean, if it's a weekend and you want to create a layout, I was obsessed. I literally scrapbooked, you know, until like 3-4 o'clock in the mornings. Really affected my professional life when I started, before I had the shop. And you know, if I wanted a red cardstock or something, I wanted a red cardstock. So that's why I've always loved the inking and the painting and, you know, those elements related to scrapbooking and being creative and crafty. I am a scrapbooker and a journaler, so you know, I don't have any other real hobbies except gardening, and I used to read lots of books until the Lord saved me, and then over the years I've just I read the Bible, and maybe if there's a good study. Okay, so there you can see that I do think that that is the perfect color. You need to let that dry, and obviously now we can trim our photo down. I did think that I need to show you guys my process, so I'm obviously just gonna cut the photo down a little bit. You know, it's you can of course measure it. I do have a bigger guillotine as well, and then obviously I want to round these corners too. I mean, that's entirely optional if you want to round corners or not. And then I am going to sand my photo. Now you can just use a file if you've got a... I still actually have my basic grey from years and years ago. I don't know where I put that in. I prefer to use that one. But because you don't get it anymore, I mostly use it off camera. Okay, and the reason I like to sand the photos is just because it pops your photograph. I normally do it on the edge of my cutting mat, which is now sanded off all the edges, but you can see there. So you can either give it a nice, you can give it a small white photo mat, or you can just sand the edges. This is a thinner paper. It's not a paper that you have. It's actually the one that I die cut these from. But when it dries, it'll be flat, and then you can also just raise it slightly. So to get on to coloring the chipboard, we're going to be using the same principle there. You know, if you want to do a two-tone, let's add some blue, and we can even add, I mean, we can get that red in there. So that's all I did. For the small pieces, if you want them one color, of course you're gonna just paint one color. You need to let it dry completely, otherwise it will, once you try to cut it, you will have a problem. Trust me on that, because I did tear it, so don't make the same mistake. But to get the variety of colors, you know, you can just do that. That's all I did. I literally don't overwork it because it's a very, very, very delicate chipboard. Can bring in some of the blue for this one, and you are just going to put it to one side to dry. Really simple, easy, nothing complicated. There we go, nothing to it. And then of course the same thing with this element. You know, so this is not Hedonia. So remember when we did the background. So you need to remember that this paper that this element is cut from is a bit more absorbent. So that's a nice one. You can just play around and color. If you don't even want to color it with the pencils, you can color it with anything that you like. You can ink it, you can blend it, you can heat emboss it. You guys, you have so many techniques that you have learned or that are available to you. Please remember that you don't always have to use the techniques that that I show you. If you don't like something, just don't do it. Really. Okay, and then of course you're going to leave this to dry as well. And just so that I can show you where this ended up. It ended up on this layout, and I did ink the edges when they were dry with my brown ink or whatever you want to use. Now let's get back to this element. Here I just wanted to show you how I completed this. So when your butterfly is dry, you can see that it's dry there. I'm going to use my new scissors and or you don't have to use a butterfly, you can even use the leaf, or you can use any of the other elements. And then I just fussy cut it. If you have other elements that you want to use, of course you can use those. But you know, you get napkins, serviettes that are really lovely. And I think I spoke about that in the February Kit Club as well. When we did that bonus page. So you can simply add that, and then you can choose from your elements. There's one, or you can use this one. This one I already glued onto a piece of cardstock, and I think I saw a butterfly here now. You know, you can also, that's the washi butterfly. You can adhere this directly to this element if you wanted to, and you can simply choose whatever you want to use. I actually cut this apart because I wanted to use one of the titles. So let's say you don't like any of those, you can use one of these. It's on a big sheet, but for now I'm just going to stick to that. And then I used a pen, a journaling pen again. That's a number 8. And all I did was I literally created like a little doodle. You guys, things are going to get so expensive. We've been through this again previously. When I opened the shop in 2009, we were just coming out of, or I can't even remember if South Africa was actually in that recession. So times are going to get tough. You will get less and less product available at reasonable prices. So I do think it is important to know how to create your own elements. There will always be a market segment that can afford everything. But for most of us, you know, we are on budgets. And although we might have hundreds of products that we can use, you know, it's always nice to know that you can renew them, you can alter them, and just make something brand new. Now, to replicate exactly what I did on this element, you can see there, I just took a little postage thing as well. You don't have to do that, you can do it. And then to make those dots, I was simply fooling around with the with these, and I thought, well, what would happen if I just made little dots? So let's quickly make little dots. Where did I put my red brush? You see, this is what happens. It's just me. I'm sure you guys can see it on the camera. Anyway, let's take another brush. So I do think I still want to stick with the brown. And you can just activate it. And before you just go onto your element, maybe just test it, you know. And then you can just make a little blob. That is literally all I did. So these do take a while to dry. You can make big ones, small ones, and then if you don't like it, you can just lift it. I did like the way that it dried in the end, and I think there's something to be said for a little bit of randomness. Big one there. And that's it. And then, I mean, of course, if you want to do something else, you can. It's just playing, you guys. And if you don't like it, you can glue your butterfly like that. If that one irritates you, if you think it's too big. But first leave it to dry so that you can see, you know, oopsie. Oh, I'm going to have to glue that butterfly down there. You can change it up, you can move it. We've got another butterfly that I know we glue down here. So if you prefer that one, it bobs your uncle. You can really do whatever you want to do. I was also thinking that although I didn't do that, I could show you, let me just lift this, how to make your own washi tape. I'm sure you guys know how to do that, but I thought just for interest sake, maybe you would like to know how to do that. Now, this is just a leftover piece of the book paper, and to make your own washi tape, you can just take some sellotape, you can press it down, and you can rip it off. Yeah, I need to press it down first. You can burnish it, that's the right term. And then you've got your own washi tape. Look at that. Nice and fun. So I picked up some of this 3M It's like a matte kind of tape, I think, and you can also write on it apparently. So I bought it at P&A here in town. They were having a sale. So I mean, I don't know if it's everywhere, but it's like a matte tape. Unfortunately, I threw the packaging away. Some book papers, though, I have found doesn't want to come off as easily as others. But anyway, you get the idea. So you can do it in a magazine, with a magazine, or if you have like a gloss element and you want to make just a little strip. And then, of course, you can add that to your projects. So look there, I think that's kind of nice. So you can use a normal adhesive, or you could probably use the gel medium to do that. Now, while we wait for things to dry, I thought I must just show you what I did for the journaling as I was preparing. I am getting more into journaling. Oh, I need to first do the glitter paper. See, I forgot about that. Okay, so let's quickly alter this. So you each have a sheet of glitter paper, and you can see there I did some half circles for this layout, and then I also did some for this project. Okay, and it couldn't be easier. Once again, you are simply going to take a brush. First, wet this. Okay, just going to put some water down. And then you are going to simply add some paint. And you leave it to dry. I love how this turned out. I do like these glitter papers. They come in all colors. But I thought, you know, if you only had to buy one, and then you can obviously just color them. They come in packs of 10, which is very nice. There we go. And then you're going to leave it to dry, and you can punch out circles. We've done glitter papers before. We've altered them with alcohol markers. I did find that the alcohol actually sometimes removed some of the glitter, depending on how vigorously you would scrub it or color it. But the watercolor is very, very nice, and it gives it a beautiful effect. So, you know, you can just punch, or you can use your flag punch that you got, the banner punch, in a previous release, or you can do circles, you can do die cuts. Let's get on to die cuts. Let me show you here. So what I created with some of the elements, you can see there with some of the collage paper, when I created this journal page, I used it as a backing there. You guys also each received a half a sheet of vellum. That was just because, and I used it here as a backing. This I colored with the set, the watercolor distress crayons, pencils. I colored this with it. I used it on this page to color some elements here. So I really love the pencils. I think they are worth the money, or well, you got them in the kit now, but I did use them for a lot of journaling. I also did some swatching. Remember I told you that I was going to use an extra journal for every time we did a KitClub. I wanted to just use some elements. So I did swatching here, and then I just put some paste over, and I added some stenciling and heat embossing. So I will also use some of the leftovers here for this journal page, or create another journal page on the video as a bonus. But I felt once I had the products out, I wanted to really just use it, because we get these products and then we just don't do anything with them again. You know, you put it in a box. So I told you I wanted to do some journaling, and that is what my plan is. So I hope that I have covered everything. I'm sure I'll see something that I missed. If I did, I'm gonna obviously finish this one. I will probably not film it because the light is frustrating me too much. And I need to get back to my proper camera. So I'm on a cell phone at the moment because the overhead doesn't reach, as I explained. And I'm going to move the studio again, hopefully before the next KitClub. Just about the splatters, I think. So here I just used the scattered straw and I just splattered on the page. You've got some pearls. You can see there's the painting that we did of the elements. So that would be the fern that we created. There's the coloring. I think I've got everything. I hope I didn't miss anything. So obviously once this is dry, you can add it to your layout. Just to, you know, if you are very much in a hurry, you can lift. But remember, lifting is just lifting. It's not swiping. So, and then make sure that your tissue or your cloth that you are lifting with, that you make sure that you don't press it then onto a different spot. Yeah. But sometimes one wants to move on. And then if you wanted to add splatters to any of your projects, of course, that's just going to be adding splatters. Here's my splatter brush. And let's get some of those white crystals, and then you can just add your splatters as per normal and leave them to dry. Nothing to it. Very simple. So I do look forward to seeing some of your projects. Remember when we started and we were testing these? So after 2 days, they are completely dry. But that one's almost completely dry. But to reactivate, of course, you are just going to add some water and you can do splatters or you can paint. So I really do like these pencils. I think that is the takeaway. I hope you enjoy the kit. I hope you enjoy the projects, and thank you once again for your continued support.